Hi, I'm going to look at the poem Eden Rock. I'll first take a broad overview of the poem and then provide a close analysis along with some relevant context. Okay, so the speaker's parents are about to have a picnic. The setting is vague, the details aren't filled in, but generally it seems idyllic. That's because of details like Causley mentions the grass and the stream. And then he also gives lots of details that are related to brightness. So the mother shades her eyes, presumably because of the sunlight. The sky widens, a pretty phrase, sort of suggesting that the sky is so bright it's losing its blueness. And then this lovely image of the mother's hair taking on the light. So if you add those details, the ones relating to brightness together, it makes the environment seem suffused with light, which is pretty idyllic. We also have this reference to the Eden in the title of the poem and again in the first line of the poem. So if you do a bit of brainstorming, remember that Eden is the earthly paradise created by God for Adam and Eve. It's referenced by Genesis in the Old Testament. So if you take all those terms and you link them together, it's clear that the poem is giving an impression of an idyllic scene. So the idyllic physical setting, I'd argue, matches the ideal nature of the child-parent relationship in this poem. So why do I say that and how can I back that up? Well, if we go to the last stanza, the parents are on one side of the stream and the speaker is on the other. They call to him in the last stanza and they use the imperative see. But this isn't urgent and it's not presented as an order. It's more gentle encouragement or an invitation. Why do I say this? Well, partly because of the use of the word leisurely in the preceding stanza. It means that they're beckoning to him leisurely. So the parents are relaxed and they're reassuring. So this makes it seem when they call to him that the speaker can cross or not cross when or as he wills. So the word leisurely links in is very similar in meaning to the word slowly. So the fact that these two words are both put into the poem suggests that the parents have all the time in the world, and so does the speaker. But at the same time, we know, and the speaker knows, that his parents are waiting for him. They are expecting him. After all, the mother is setting out 3 plates and presumably also 3 cups. So really, they're ideal parents. They're supportive, they're inclusive, they're encouraging, but they're not willing to limit the speaker's freedom. Okay, so all these features create a great sense of peace and tranquility in the poem. And this is backed up by other details. So the mother sets out the picnic stuff in what appears to be quite an orderly and neat manner. And then we have the dog trembling at the feet of the speaker's father. So that implies that the dog is being obedient. So there is quite a strong sense that everything is either where it should be in this poem or is being placed where it ought to be. And this idea, this theme, is reflected in the layout of the poem. So the text has an orderly appearance on the page, so you have 4 lines to each stanza, making each stanza a quatrain. And structurally, the poem is also regular, so you'll find that there are mostly 10 syllables in each line. So, in other words, there's nothing jarring or out of place either in what the poem is talking about or in the actual construction of the poem itself, except of course when we get to the last stanza, because the last line has been unlinked from the preceding 3. Now that does appear to be jarring. And it must be deliberate because I've just shown you that the poem is really carefully structured. So we need to come back later on to the reason why Causley has done this. Okay, so that's your general overview. Now we can look more specifically at the images used in the poem. So I mentioned the fact that the setting is quite vague. That contrasts with the very specific images that relate to the people in the poem and to their actions. So if we take the first stanza, that's all related to the father. So we know that the father is 25. He's wearing a tweed suit, and men used to wear tweed suits when they went hunting. We get the impression that he might be standing. We know, after all, later on he spins a stone along the water, and presumably he's standing to do that. And we also know, as I mentioned before, that his dog is trembling at his feet. We get the impression that he's standing. And the fact that the dog, as I said before, is obedient and submissive is also telling. If you add all these details up, you really do get quite a strong impression that the father is a masculine, fairly authoritative, vigorous figure. Okay. So if we move on to the mother, the details are equally telling. So she is also youthful. She is in a dress, not trousers. That's a feminine choice. Her dress is sprigged, which means it's made out of a material that has a flower pattern on it, also feminine. She is not standing up. Presumably she is either sitting down or kneeling down in order to spread the cloth over the grass. So that's quite a typically female occupation. So already she comes across as quite feminine, and then you have this idea of her hair taking on the light presents her as an angelic figure. She also seems quite neat and self-contained. I've already mentioned the orderly way in which the picnic things are laid out, but even the way she's dressed is quite orderly. So her dress is drawn at the waist, so her silhouette is quite definitely defined, and then she's paid attention. She's put a ribbon in her straw hat. So in a way, the attention that the mother pays to setting up the picnic stuff and to her own appearance is sort of reflected in the way that the speaker is detailing the very precise aspects of the scene in front of him. Okay, so now Causley never married, and he was an only child, which might partly explain not just the subject matter of the poem, but the attention to detail in the poem and the level of really unqualified affection and respect he displays for his parents here. We also know that Causley's father died sometime after World War I, when Causley himself was only 7 years old. So the fact that both his parents are presented as young in this poem indicates that these really startlingly clear visual images are probably drawn from early childhood memory, the way his parents were when he was a small child in the 1920s, maybe when he was 5 or 6. Okay, so the fact that these images are drawn from childhood memories is perhaps indicated in some unusual textual details. So, for example, you might have wondered why thermos is capitalized, and that's because when Causley was a child, thermos was actually a trademark, hence the capitalization. It no longer is, so we don't capitalize thermos anymore. But when Causley was a child, he would have seen the word thermos with a capital. So he's reflecting his childhood memories in the use of this capital, possibly. Then we have the use of capitals in the first stanza, genuine Irish tweed. So why is that capitalized? Well, a possible explanation was that his father's tweed suit had a label on the lining of the coat stating, with capitals obviously, that it was genuine Irish tweed. And that's the kind of detail a really young child would notice and be fascinated by and remember. So in this way, Causley might perhaps be indicating that this verbal snapshot of his father is drawn from a precise and actual childhood memory. But is this all the poem is about? Is it just about an evocation of memories? Well, probably not. When he wrote the poem, Causley was 61 years old, and his mother had lived to a very old age, but she was also dead. So he has no immediate family, or had no immediate family, children or grandchildren. So he was looking back to his memories, but when he did look forward, he was probably thinking about, well, death and what might take place after that. So Causley is suggesting that his poem is a vision in many ways throughout the text, a vision of the afterlife, in other words, perhaps right from the title, okay? So Eden Rock, this place doesn't actually exist. Causley did admit to a journalist later on that he completely made it up. So the fact that he's made up this place name and that he repeats the place name again in the first line of the poem means that the setting of the picnic and the poem is kind of anchored in an alternative universe or reality. The picnic's no longer just a memory. It's arguably a depiction of a vision of what might be or what actually is on a different plane of reality. Okay, so we've looked at what Eden means, but what does rock mean, given that this is a fictitious place name? We can work out, well, why is it that he chose these words? Well, we kind of know why he chose Eden, but what about rock? Since Eden has a biblical reference, does rock have a biblical reference as well? Well, yes, it does. So in the Bible, the Lord is often referred to as a rock. Okay, so in Psalm 18:2, God is referred to as my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. The Lord is my rock, so in whom I take refuge. So we use rock in a similar way today. If you say someone is he's my rock, it means that they're reliable and supportive. So Corsley is probably uniting these two biblical references, first to show that his parents offer him solace and comfort, as well as support and security. And secondly, it also suggests that the place where they are picnicking is a place of security or solace, or a paradise or a heaven, if you like. Okay, so Corsley further separates his depiction from memory by his use of the present tense throughout the poem. So at the first line, they are waiting for me. Okay, so we have the past tense here, but again, back to the present tense, pause T, sky whitens, mother shades her eyes, you get the idea. So memory relates to the past. So the use of the present tense means something different. It means that what is happening in the poem is happening now as you read it or as the speaker speaks it. So there's a real sense of immediacy here and not of nostalgia, and that's caused by the use of the present tense. So Corsley further differentiates his vision of his father from his memory of his father by the use of the word still. Okay, still and same. So what he's implying by the use of those two words is that he's basically saying, look, here is my father once more. He's actually in front of me. See, he's got the same suit on and his dog is still 2 years old. So there are further language details that add to the impression that this picnic takes place on a different plane of existence, or again, heaven if you like. There's this really weird detail of the sky being lit by 3 suns. This is a surreal image that suggests that it's not a memory that he's creating here, but a vision. And you notice that the 3 suns are in a white sky. So that mimics the 3 plates and the cups on the white cloth on the grass. So you've got 3 sets of 3s all mimicking each other. Now, 3 is really important in the Christian religion as it suggests Trinity, the Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And then you get this odd phrase, the drifted stream. Why is it odd? Well, to drift means to move slowly. So a stream can move slowly, and we use the present participle drifting to denote that. But here you've got the use of the past participle, drifted. So that's an unusual word choice. And what that does is to suggest that the stream was moving slowly, but is no longer. It's as if it has been frozen in an eternal present. So that usage, drifted stream, combined with leisurely and slowly, that creates a sense of timelessness. And that's something we would definitely associate with heaven. So in this context of surreal imagery and Christian references, we get back to this notion of crossing a stream. Remember, the speaker is on one side and the parents on another. So that becomes, in the context of the poem as a whole, a metaphor for like crossing over to the other side, or more literally speaking, dying, passing through death to the beyond, or whatever that might be. So in the Bible, crossing rivers is always a transition from sin to salvation, from death to life. And the River Jordan is often mentioned in the Bible, and crossing the River Jordan is, like the phrase passing over, a euphemism for dying. So essentially, when the speaker is being invited by his parents to cross over, that's a metaphor for him being invited to die and to enter paradise. And that explains this structural feature that we noted before of the last line being unlinked from the other 3 lines in the final stanza. So this last line represents the solitude of the speaker, distanced by life from his parents, who are dead now, rather existing on the perfect plane that is heaven. So the speaker in the last line has to make a decision. And the tone of this last line can be read as distrustful or hesitant. The speaker is still on the verge of making a choice that the reader never gets to hear. In this way, the poem moves from the real certainty of these very concrete, specific physical images to like the internal emotional uncertainty of the end. And there are other ways of reading this ending and the poem, but that's all I've got time for now. I hope you found this lesson useful. If you did, like my video or subscribe. Bye for now.